Hello, I hope you're doing well. My name is Serena, and today I'm going to be doing my reading wrap up for March and April. I was kind of on a roll these past 2 months, which is not something I can always say. I am notorious for getting into reading slumps or not giving up on a book that I'm not liking and instead just pushing through, but taking forever to read it. But I was actually reading so much these past few months. I was really trying to prioritize reading instead of being on my phone. Like with my morning coffee, I would read a book instead. I was really trying to read on my breaks at work instead of just scrolling TikTok over and over. So I'm really proud of myself for that. And I've read some really good things and I can't wait to share them with you. All right, so the first book I read was Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. It is a historical fiction novella, which is not my type of thing, but I had heard so many good things about this. It was hailed as like one of the best books of the year it came out in. So I figured I had to read it. And it was so good. I am so glad. I highly recommend this book. It's a short book and it grabbed me right away. And even if historical fiction isn't your thing, because it's not really my thing, I still really enjoyed this. It takes place in the 80s, so it's not like super historical, but there's still, there's an old fashionedness to all of it because they're like a lower income family in rural Ireland in the 80s. So, yeah, they don't have like the best technology and they're not really talking about key pop culture moments. On surface level, it's just a really simple story. Like it's described as an Irishman who works as a coal merchant, I believe, and he's just preparing for Christmas Day with his family. He has a bunch of daughters and a wife at home, and then he stumbles across a convent, and I don't want to give away too much about how he begins to intertwine with the girls at the convent and the women running the convent, but the story kind of takes off from there. This book just epitomizes that you don't need a lot of words or a lot of pages to tell a well-rounded, solid story. It's under 150 pages, I believe, and I still feel like I got so much out of it, which I cannot say for all novellas. Not all of them are created equal, but this one is definitely worth your time. I also had one of those great moments while reading it where I looked it up to see if they were turning it into a movie, and the movie already exists and Cillian Murphy's in it. I haven't watched it yet because it's on Apple TV, and enough said, but I'm really excited to watch it and I'm curious just to see how they adapted things. Next, I read Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, which I made a whole video about. I can link it down below. It was just amazing. It was everything I hoped for because this was probably my most hyped book of 2025, and it did not let me down. I read it in 2 sittings, and I normally don't read things at that pace, but I just couldn't put it down. It had me hooked, and it was so nice to see all these characters that, we grow to love in the original trilogy. You see the evolution of the games, you see how everyone connects in these ways that we don't necessarily hear about in the original books. So this was awesome. If you haven't read it yet and you're a fan of the Hunger Games, you need to go out and pick it up right now. And the movie cast, they keep announcing it. I'm on the edge of my seat. And yeah, I will be like first in line for that midnight premiere. Okay, Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. This was actually my second try at reading this book. I could not get through it the first time I tried. It was just very long and kind of meandering, and I just gave up, but I decided to read it again. I made a whole video on this as well, and I really didn't love it. It just didn't do it for me. I'm worried that hockey sports romances just aren't my thing, and I'm trying to like force myself to like them because I love them in theory. I like what the authors are going for. I like the vibes. I've just yet to find one where I like all of the parts and the way they're working together. Like I've read some where the plot is getting me, but I don't like the characters or I'm not buying the love story. And that was just kind of my issue here. I felt this one was a little overstuffed, and as soon as I thought I knew the characters, they would do something that made me question everything and felt suddenly out of character. And yeah, it just didn't hit, and I was really hopeful because everyone loves this book, but it just wasn't for me. Not to say it won't be for you. I do think there are a lot of things about Icebreaker that are fun. For example, I really love the friendships and the like group chat scenes and the party scenes. And also, there's a big focus on consent in all of the spicy scenes, which I really think is important, especially because this book falls into the hands of a lot of young readers. So I think if they're reading smut and whatnot, it should be handled this way. I really love listening to memoirs as opposed to reading them when it's the writer doing the narrating. I honestly think there are some that is how the book is meant to be read. And the first one I'm going to talk about is Finding Me by Viola Davis. I love Viola Davis. I think she is like a generational talent. She is one of the greats. And she is just such a force of nature. And this book really made me realize that she is just so strong and so talented and really appreciate her more. She has such a powerful voice, and it was just so captivating listening to her talk about all these things in her childhood and her experiences in Hollywood and just how she got to this point in her life. What I found so interesting about this is a lot of artist memoirs kind of go through the woe is me, people told me I wasn't good enough, I wasn't talented enough, I doubted myself. But she never really does that. She talks about doubting her like looks and if she was beautiful enough to make it in the industry. She talks about thinking that she's not worthy for a romantic relationship, at least not a healthy one. But she never wavers on knowing she's talented and knowing she deserves to be an actor. She was just so confident and driven and knew that acting was what she was meant to do. And it's so clear if you've ever watched her in anything, like she is meant for the stage and the screen. And I'm just so glad that so many people believed in her and supported her along the way because she's phenomenal. She's one of the greats, and this book just really gave me so much more to admire and appreciate about her. Okay, the next memoir, and I also listened to this and I don't think you should read it any other way. It was Greenlights by Matthew McConaughey, who he has that iconic voice. It is soothing, it is fun. Like he is just a delight to listen to, and reading these journal entries was just, oh my god, I can't say enough good things about this audiobook. I don't know how it would have translated just reading it on the page, but he is such a natural storyteller, and you can tell that he took this seriously and was passionate about bringing all these journal entries together and telling his life story and the lessons he's learned. This was honestly just a lot of fun. Even if he was telling kind of like a fun, low stakes story, I was still so invested in it because he is just that good of a storyteller. I really like the way he talks about his wife and their family. It's really sweet. And I also really enjoyed the way he talks about his experience in Hollywood. I love movies. I love romantic comedies. So hearing him talk about kind of the ins and outs of that time in the early 2000s when he was like the hot commodity for a romantic comedy was super interesting. Like he's talking about turning down a role and they kept offering him more money, and eventually it was like tens of millions of dollars, and he said, "Nope, I'm still good." And they just don't give that money to to romantic comedies anymore. I feel like Hollywood doesn't think they get people into theaters, but you used to have these actors like Matthew McConaughey who you could pay him $15 million because he would have gotten people into the theaters. And we are in need of a renaissance of the romantic comedy. And do you know what? Glenn Powell can do it. We need Glenn Powell up in here. So I'm in my Abby Jimenez era. She is one of my favorite romance writers, and I read Just for the Summer last year. Absolutely adored it. And then realized that it was the third in a series, and I was like, okay, time to backtrack. So I went back to Part of Your World, which is the first one in that trilogy, if you will. And it was so much fun. I kind of wish I read them in order, but I still got the Easter eggs. I think it just would have hit different if I had this context first. But this one was pretty good. I really liked the characters. The conflict all felt really real. Basically, the main character is like this legacy doctor. Think Meredith Grey, think like Jackson Avery in Grey's Anatomy terms. And she's meets this younger man, and he's like a small town boy, and she's worried that she wouldn't fit into his world and he wouldn't fit into hers. And that feels like a really difficult relationship to navigate and definitely would cause conflict. So I really liked that everything kind of felt realistic and the drama didn't feel forced because the stakes were pretty high for these characters. This is not my favorite of her books, but it was really, really good and I do recommend it. My favorite book dethroning just for the summer. Look, I'm like glowing about to talk about it, but it is yours truly. And oh, this book did something to me. Like it changed my brain chemistry forever. I finished it in like 2 days. Again, I do not read books that quickly. I was so hooked on this book. I could not believe it. I was so into this book and so into these characters. I don't know what it was. It had the sauce and it did something for me. The FMC was just a really good person to follow. The love interest is so, so sweet. I also am a big Grey's Anatomy fan. So I think the fact that they were both like doctors working in a hospital and it was almost enemies to lovers first really got me. Something this book does so, so well, and I don't know if it's this one or just for the summer or both, but Abby Jimenez mentions like going to mental health professionals when she's writing about these things, and you can tell because it makes such a difference. Jacob, who's the love interest, has anxiety, but specifically pretty bad social anxiety, and the way it's written is so clear because I've struggled with a lot of social anxiety in my life. And reading what he was doing, I was like, okay, this is accurate. It's not always like being socially awkward or really quiet. It's, like panicking and looking at menus so you're not indecisive when you get into a restaurant. It's sitting in your car after already arriving early to make sure you had a parking spot. It's really just the little things that you do so you avoid any awkward situations. It's not so much being awkward in normal situations. And I really appreciated that. And I appreciate the care that she put into writing these characters. This book is a hit. If you see me reading it again, don't talk about it. It was just amazing. And of course, since I read those two, I figured I should read Just for the Summer as well to see what I missed and what would make more sense after reading those two. And oh my God, please read it in order if you haven't read any of them. It really changes everything, but in a good way. Oh my God, I see these characters and I get so excited because I know how they connect and I know their backstories. And also, this book is still a hit. It's almost better than I remembered it. The characters, again, their struggles with their mental health and what they're going through is portrayed really well and really accurately. They have such a sweet love story. They're both really likable. The side characters are likable. And yeah, Abby Jimenez, she's got me. And the last book I read was, of course, Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. I could have probably made a whole video about this, but it was really hard for me to make something coherent out of my thoughts. And I felt like the time just sort of passed for me to make a whole video, and I was going to talk about it in here anyways. If you put Emily Henry, Taylor Jenkins Reid, and the songs The Last Great American Dynasty and Marjorie by Taylor Swift into a blender, this book is what you would get. It's different for Emily Henry, and I know that's something she's been talking about on this press tour and leading up to the book being released, but it is still, there's so much of her and that wit and the, banter between the characters where it really just feels like an extension of her work and that she really tried something new and excelled. The scenes from the past with the heiress are told in, again, a very Taylor Jenkins Reid sort of way. It felt like I could have been reading excerpts out of Evelyn Hugo. It's told in like a slightly different writing style that really puts you into that time period, and I loved reading about it. She has this historical side and this third main character, but you don't lose the love story at the cost of telling this greater story. At least I didn't find that. I've heard a lot of mixed reviews on this, but I don't know. I feel like people might not have listened to Emily Henry's almost warnings of saying that this is different. It's not like what I've written before. So they went in expecting like a beach read situation, and that's not what they got. Whereas I think if you went in knowing that there was going to be three main characters and the love story and not just the two main characters falling in love, you would have liked it a bit more. I'm also probably the only person with this issue, and my friends thought I was insane, but I had to return the book because it was so like large and uncomfortable in my hands that it was frustrating me to pick up this book and read it, and it was literally deterring me from wanting to read this book for the first few days. So I had to return it and then get it on my Kobo and read it digitally. When it comes out on paperback, eventually I'll probably get it to add to my collection, but I physically couldn't stand reading it. It was even I took the dust jacket off and I was just so annoyed with the size of it. So if you're not into hardcovers, beware. I couldn't do it. But yeah, this was just wonderful. I do not even know where it falls on my Emily Henry rankings because I literally just love everything she writes. So it's definitely a struggle for me to place them in any sort of order in my head. Also, there is a part that is like on par with Why Do You Think January from Beach Read. I told my coworker, I was like, oh my God, you have to come tell me when you read this part. Like, I think you'll know what it is. And sure enough, she came to me the next day and we were like squealing and giggling about it because it was so good. And if you know, you know. But yeah, it was good. It was a wild ride. I loved it. Okay, and that was everything I read in March and April. I really read some hits. I am really happy with everything I've been reading this year. I've been discovering so many new books, and it's just been a great year of books for me. I know my last video was literally a spring specific TBR. We'll see if my May wrap up includes literally any of those, but hopefully it does. I was trying to hold myself accountable. Thank you so much for being here. Please let me know your thoughts on any of these books or your favorite spring reads down in the comments below. I would love to hear them, and I will see you next time. Bye!